Hello there. It is week number 9. We're over halfway through. Hopefully, midterm wasn't too bad. Now, remember, that midterm was due on Sunday night at midnight. But because I'm a nice person, I do give you today, Monday, and Tuesday to wrap that up. So I can always grade it later if something happened and you didn't let me know. But please make sure those are all in. That's worth 100 points. I think I put it as 100 points, but I put it as a lot of points. And I do not want to give you zeros on it. That's not good. So make sure you have that stuff done. Get last week all taken care of, and we can jump into this week. As you can see from the chapter title, Total War, Totalitarianism, and the Arts, we are hitting on what the early 1900s really was for the world, aka war infested. So if we look at it, the end of the 19th century, remember that's the 1800s, was a time of relative peace and optimistic faith. Like at that time, so the end of the 1800s, early 1900s, there was war. Like we can list off the number of wars, but for the major countries, the main ones that we've seen, the powerhouses, so to speak, it was doing okay. They were actually rising with money, rising in advancements. Their military was looking good. And that's what brought war. It War is basically a way to show rivalries. It's saying, hey, look at me, I'm awesome. And someone else is like, no, I'm actually better. And so that was kind of like how World War One started. It was all these different countries in Europe had power and wanted more power. And you can see by this movement, Germany, Austria, Hungary, the Ottoman Empire were those main central powers, which eventually lost the war. They started invading all these different countries, and it was a deadly, terrible war. Up until 1914 to 1918, no war had been that terrible, that bad, because it kind of got into trench warfare. It got into gas. It got like the scientific and technology advancements led to a lot of people dying. And literature, poetry, fiction, all that comes from it and really kind of shows it because poetry showed the patriotism, the frustration, the military, the despair, all these emotions. Some push that World War One was a symbol of dying cultures because the Renaissance, the beauty of the world in the years past that in the weeks past that we talked about is now kind of gone, and everyone's talking about the torture, the despair, the ugliness of the human nature in the war. Authors served in said army. We can see that Hemingway was a big one. His book Farewell to Arms. Eric Remarque talking about All Quiet on the Western Front. Those really showed what life was like for those soldiers, what life was like in those trenches. It kind of was that first time that really darkness and despair was shown as a real thing. Yeah, we had those periods of time where it was very realist, where they're like, "Ooh, this isn't the best," and it showed some of the dark, but human killing human type of thing really brought those dangers. During World War One, uh, J.R.R. Tolkien got the ideas for the Hobbit the Hobbit and Lord of the Rings. You can kind of see the elements of those stories from the horrors he had to witness in that war. Art kind of did the same. It showed that satire, it showed the court criticism of the war, and really pushed for people to understand everything fully. When there's war, when there's times of changing, ideas change. And that's where we see the Russian Revolution. Nicholas II and his family, if you ever seen the movie Anastasia, their deaths are a lot more brutal than how they're portrayed in that 20th Century Fox movie that Disney bought. They were tortured and killed pretty brutally by Vladimir Lenin and the Russian revolutionaries who thought, hey, out with the old, out with the czar, the king, and in with this new communist government, which idea was We as a people collectively work together. Everyone gets what they need. Everyone is taken care of. Everyone is okay. We work as one big unit to make this utopia. That sounds beautiful. Like everyone is always taken care of, no real like frustration. However, greed plays a role and it becomes totalitarian when Lenin dies and good old Joseph Stalin takes over. You can kind of start seeing the propaganda because Joseph Stalin is saying, hey, follow me, my ideas of industrialize, my ideas of let's make this country military grow and become powerful. And people started to follow along. He was able to use those scare tactics and propaganda posters to really promote his idea over others. And that scare technique really comes into play when the Great Depression hit. You got to remember, the Great Depression hit the entire world. Yes, the United States was probably one of the worst off countries because of the 1920s, where it was just let's be luxurious, let's be elaborate, let's go put everything on the credit card, everything on the credit card. As we know, that's a terrible idea. Credit cards are helpful, but they can get tricky very, very fast. So in the 1920s, America was kind of racking up that debt. Then in 1929, that debt was like pay now, but no one had the funds. And then the economy crashed. So the country didn't even have the funds. And everyone was struggling just to get by. Grapes of Wrath. I read that novel by John Steinbeck. It's just finding work, moving from Oklahoma to California, just trying to like, hey, there's a better place over there. There's where the work is. We're going to follow it, but never actually really finding it. So the Great Depression is showing the miseries. Visual arts, the murals are coming place where it just shows here's the labyrinth. And then all of a sudden, kind of like the sad parts. Photography, being able to actually take pictures and show people's emotions and faces really played that role in kind of just being miserable. And since the world was being miserable because no one had two pennies to rub together, that allowed for people like Adolf Hitler and Benito Mussolini and then Joseph Stalin in Russia to say, hey, I got a solution. Listen to me. Here's how we're going to make life better. And on paper, it kind of worked. But in reality, it did not. So people they were like, the everyday person's like, we need a solution. We need someone to save us. We are in danger. And these extremists, these totalitarian, these dictators rise up and go, we have the solution. Follow me. And because they were the only ones who had that solution, they really were the only ones to listen to. And then that's when the World War II really showcases. The Holocaust comes into play there. And it's just destruction beyond what we even imagined back in World War I. And that journalism, photojournalism, seeing the destruction, seeing it even more than World War I, showcases that poetry, showcases fictions. And you got to remember, during the entire time, totalitarianists, those dictators, really limited the arts. They really promoted only things that promoted them. So a lot of culture is starting to shift and showcase what was going on, because some of it was a lie. Was able the dictator saying, hey, we're not that bad, we're doing pretty good. But in reality, not so much. Like I said earlier, photojournalism, like journalists going to these war areas, taking the pictures, like filming or recording what they're seeing, actually being there. First real place in World War II. Music, once again, you start showcasing the songs and the beauty of the voice, but also you can see all the extremists going on as well. Well, that wraps up about chapter 34. A lot of different things going. 1900 to 1950, think about all those scientific advancements. Think about all those new ideas being pushed forward, brought forward, being like, oh my goodness, and hitting the world like that. And so this week we're back to normal. Watch this video, read the chapter, do the discussion post, and then your quiz and 2 comments. Work through the whole week, get it all done in one day, whatever works best for you. Remember, I am here to help should you need it. Otherwise, good luck.